Alright, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over some player ratings from today's game in the Europa League of AC Milan versus Red Star Belgrade. It ended up as a 2-2 tie where Red Star Belgrade scored in the last minute or two of the match to tie it up. They were down to 10 men as well, so a bit of a disappointment overall for Milan, as we would have expected to win this game regardless, especially after we had the 2-1 lead. So I'm going to go through with some player ratings starting at the back. We will start with Gianluigi Donnarumma. He didn't really have much action. He was not called into action too much today. When he was needed and called into action, he did well. Not really too much he could have done on either goal. The second one, maybe he could have positioned himself better, but it was a decent looping header that kind of caught everybody a little bit off guard there and was more due to poor marking rather than Donnarumma's fault. First goal was a penalty, so you never really expect him to save it, and he did get dang close, so 6 out of 10 there. Next would be our right back, which is the youngster, Pierre Colulu. I'm not sure if you guys have listened prior, but I am pretty big on this kid. I think he's going to be something special. I feel like he's a gem in the making, and all we need at this point are just solid performances. We don't need any crazy flashes of amazingness and flair and all that type of stuff. We just need solid performances. Let him build and build and build, and I believe he'll come good. Today I thought he actually did a very good job. In the second half, he was very active still. A little bit of positional mishaps here and there, but he did pretty dang good overall. He was driving forward enough, yet he was still covering the back, which is a hallmark of right backs that I personally look for. I don't enjoy when the side backs completely abandon their defensive duties in favor of attacking only. If you're a wing back, you have a little bit more freedom to do that, but as a side back, you cannot. You have to be very balanced, and Colulu was that. I thought he played quite well. I would give him a 6.5. Next up is the new center back that we've brought in, Vikaiotomori. So far, he's been very, very solid in each game that we have tried him in. The only kind of knocks on him so far is that he'll lose his man periodically, and his aerial prowess is not up to snuff yet. But he's very good in one-on-ones. He's very fast and very quick, and that seems to be more of the same today. Overall, I thought he played very good, and to be honest, this was one of his, in my opinion, his better positional games, which is a really good sign for the future for me, because if he can become positionally great to where he doesn't have to rely on his speed, then he's going to become an excellent player. So another good performance from Tomori. His passing is a little bit sloppy, but that can be worked on. I'd rather him have the intangibles for a defender, such as positioning and whatnot, first, and then we can work on the passing. But overall, a pretty average game from him, pretty solid and quite promising. I would give him a 6. Alessia Romanoli, he has been under fire recently. He actually had been having a pretty decent season for most of the game so far, especially when next to Simon Kjaer, but he is prone to his random stinker game here and there, and I would say this was pretty close to it. He didn't play awful the entire game, but he was just a little bit sluggish, looked a little bit out of form, and then he had the handball. So while he didn't necessarily play bad and he was in control most of the game, there were a couple positioning mistakes here and there. Not really deserving of a very low rating, but because he caused the handball, I would have to give him a 5.5. I mean, handballs can be a little bit unlucky, yes, based on somebody just kicking the ball into your arm, especially as he was kind of moving his arms flailed out to the side. He normally puts his arms behind his back, so he probably should have done the same in this scenario. So he is a little bit at fault for that. So 5.5 for Romagnoli, and the worse off of the two center back pairings today. Something that has to be said is that he has played with so many different partners. The guy has had absolutely no consistency between Kjaer, Gabbia, Colulu, Tomori, you name it, he's played with them. So some consistency would definitely do. When Kjaer is fit, that's our best pairing, but when Kjaer is out, I would like to see Romagnoli and Tomori get a little bit more comfortable with each other, because technically on paper their skill set should benefit each other well. So we'll see how the rest goes from here. Next up is left back Tera Hernandez, who has been a revelation since joining Milan. He'll have his occasional game where he does not play very well, and he had been not so great over the past several weeks here, but today he showed us again why he is so good and why he's been really a boon for this side. I think that he was fantastic, especially in the second half, driving forward continuously in those trademark runs that we are very used to seeing him do. But he was also solid defensively for the most part. He did let a couple guys go by him too easily, which is never a good thing. But a lot of players are to blame for that. That is one facet of his game that he really does need to improve. And it may just be due to where he burns himself thin because he dashes forward so much that oftentimes he can't get back. So overall, he was one of the main reasons why we were actually ahead today leading into the last few minutes. So he was one of the top performers. I would give him a 7 to 7.5. Next up is Sualejo Mete. I have not been very big on Mete. I think of our winter transfers, in my opinion, he's been the worst one. He is always prone to at least one big mistake per game, which is reminding me a lot of Roddy Krunich, to where, like, overall they're not a bad player, but they can make crucial mistakes. They can let the team down in very big moments. They have some skills and they'll kind of flatter to deceive you here and there, but overall not a great player. Now, this game, I was like, okay, maybe Mete is starting to kind of settle. He's starting to find his feet. He wasn't playing very bad, actually. He was doing the things he needed to do. His positioning was all right. It was a little bit better than normal. He won some good headers. He showed his strength, which he should always be doing since that's one of his good attributes. He had a good, solid header. He didn't really place it at all, but he had a good connection with a header a little bit later in the game. And overall, I was ready to give him his very first 6 in my player ratings, but he had to drop the ball right at the very end of the game with very poor marking on the goal scorer for Red Star Belgrade to get the 2-2 tie. If you look at who was marking the man in the box at the start of that corner kick, it was Mete. Mete just does a very weak jump behind him. He doesn't mark the man himself. He just kind of jumps at the air, and boom, no marking, easy header, loops the ball in, and it does go in. I mean, it's just sloppy. You don't play the game for 89, 90 minutes. You play the game until stoppage time is over, and if he would have just focused for a few more minutes, we'd be walking out of here with a 2-1 win. It reminds me a lot of Roddy Krunich, so I don't believe that this is the guy for us. But today, despite the big error at the end, he actually played pretty decent, and if he keeps doing this, then I'll at least be okay with this as a good depth signing for the end of the season. Moving on to Benacer, early injury, can't really say much. It's really unfortunate that we're losing Benacer for so many games this season. This is going to hurt. It already did hurt for a while. I mean, when Tonali's in, you don't notice it as much, but when you do have to run Mete plus Cassier, that's a pretty lackluster midfield. So here's to hoping that Tonali stays very, very fit and that Cassier stays very, very fit, because from here on out for the rest of the season, it's going to be a rough one. Benacer was really starting to show his own at the very beginning of the season, at the end of last season, and the injuries have just been brutal to him. I'm hoping he doesn't become our Stefano Sensi and keeps having a recurrent injury in an otherwise very talented player. My best goes out to him, and I hope he has a quick recovery. Next is Samo Castillejo, who has been a bit of an outcast here. Honestly, he played great today. I think that he was one of the bright points for us, and I would give him a 6.5. He was agile, he was quick, he was decent with the ball at his feet, he didn't lose it as much as he typically does, he made a lot of things happen, pressured the opponents, and he was definitely the better in the second half of the right side versus left side. When Rebic was in earlier on in the game, it was pretty balanced and good. When Leao moved in, he was a little bit sloppy and lazy, so not much came out of that side unless it was from Teo. And so our right side was the better side overall, with both Colulu and Castillejo linking up quite well. I thought they had good chemistry as well. So Castillejo does deserve a 6.5 today. Next, at our attacking mid spot, kind of a stopgap measure, putting Roddy Krunich in there, more of a defensive move, but he can play there. I mean, it's probably a good place for him because he does less damage. For example, if Krunich was back to where Mete was, we'd probably have the same thing to say about Krunich today as I had to say about Mete. Played good overall, but made a crucial mistake. Because Krunich is up in the attacking mid spot, there was no crucial mistake to be made. He played decent, one of his better games, just like Mete, but there was no kind of goal-giving mistake that he had. He lost the ball cheaply a couple of times, which can be expected, but overall he kept the play going. He was pretty decent, made some good runs. I can't say too much negative about him, so 6 for Krunich. Rebic, who started on the left, I thought he was lively, he was energetic. I thought he looked ready to go, which is really more of a benefit for our next game, which is coming up against Inter Milan. So I would be looking for him to get the start there, as he looked very, very lively. Taken off at halftime, so wasn't really given the full chance to do too much after that. So Overall, 6. Mario Mandzukic gets his first full start and full run out since he was brought in. And he plays a lot differently than Zlatan. He's still strong, he's tall, he has good ball control and can still bring the ball down, but he does get out of position a lot more, which I think is a negative for our team, as we don't really have a focal point when that person is not there. That's why Ibra works so well. Yes, Ibra does come back a little bit into midfield and help out there, especially to kind of dictate play and to facilitate other players' movements. Mandzukic is not as good as that, and he gets a little bit further out of position. He'll drift wide a lot, he'll drift back too much, so if he can stay a little bit more towards where he needs to be, I think he'll do great. And he definitely does not have 90 minutes in his legs. You could see that he was really petering out in the second half. Substitutes. The first substitute was the early substitute of Sandro Tonali. He's also coming back from injury just like Benacer, but fortunately his was not as severe, and he played fantastic. I do believe that this was one of the few games that we've seen him really come into his own. He's been getting slowly better throughout the season, which is good, but he really stepped up today. He was definitely the ball controller in midfield. He made everything work. He was solid defensively as well, and he really put his stamp on the game today. In my opinion, it was him and Theo Hernandez who were really the standouts for Milan today, and you can even see that evident on our second goal, which was a connection between Tonali and Hernandez. I'm really glad to see him finally start to step up. He's had his critics, but you know what? It just really shows the character of the kid to just stay calm, keep working, keep his head down, and the chances will come. And if performances like this are what's to come in the future, then we should have nothing to worry about. If we have him and Benacer trading time, that's two awesome players who can control the ball and distribute. They both had different strengths for sure, but with both of them healthy, it's going to be nothing but a great thing for us. Next is Raphael Leao, who came in. He looked very sloppy, very sluggish. A couple of good runs, which you can always expect from Leao, as he has an abundance of talent, but he also does have this lazy side. And you saw it today. Over the past few weeks, you haven't really seen it. He's seemingly changed his mindset. He's working a lot harder, and it's been really, really nice to see. But because he kind of went back into the old layout today to where he was either great or awful, the laziness and the lack of energy really deserved him quite a poor performance. I would give him a 5.5. Definitely could have done better on the day here. He wasn't the worst thing in the world, but he just didn't really offer anything. And once Rebic was taken off and Leao was placed on, nothing was coming off our left side unless it was from Theo. Diogo Dalot and Çalhanoğlu just getting some minutes in their legs, but really nothing to judge here, so no rating there. Pioli, 6.5 to 7, probably closer to a 6.5. He did set up the team properly. I thought his starting lineup was completely fine. I didn't really see any negatives to how he lined it up. He was giving the people who he needed minutes. I don't know, there's really nothing else that I think he could have done today. It really just came down to two individual errors, which you can't really blame a coach for that. As far as the man of the match, or men of the match, I would say, as I already hinted towards, it's going to be Theo and Tonali. They were fantastic overall, and they were the main reasons why we were in the lead 2-1 for a little while there as well. The worst of the match, it has to be the two people responsible for both goals, which would be Romagnoli and Mete. Romagnoli has had his fair share of critics, I believe, very unfairly. Yes, he hasn't been amazing this season, but he had been playing very, very solid for most of the season. Not as good as last year, of course, but he really doesn't deserve a lot of the criticism that he gets. People do love a scapegoat, so it is what it is. But he did come at fault for the first goal. His hand was out in a position where it shouldn't have been. He normally is very good about getting his hands behind his back. It was a good flick from the Red Star Belgrade player and caught him out. Handball. It is what it is. He was also a little bit sluggish, which in my opinion is a worse offense than the random handball. Of course, the handball was the goal, but he just looked a little bit sluggish today. Hopefully, against Inter, he's able to bring the same performance that he had against Inter in the Copa, as he was fantastic. So let's hope that he shakes this one off and gets back to his prior performances. The other worst of the match is going to be Mete. He actually played pretty solid for most of the game. I had no qualms with him for 90% of the game, 99% of the game. But the last 2 minutes, he did not cover his man. It was very weak marking. He just kind of lazily jumped up at the ball. He didn't put any pressure on the defender, let him get a nice free header because he thought, it's probably not going in. Lo and behold, it went in. Don't play most of the match, play the entire match. So, as I said a little bit earlier, he reminds me a lot of Krunich. Plays very solid. He's a decent player overall. And then a terrible mistake to cause a goal. And there you go. Some key points, which I've already mentioned a little bit about. Romanoli looked very sluggish. He needs to kind of step back up to how he was playing back when Simon Kjaer was his partner. Yes, he deserves a little bit of, a halting of the install thing because he has played with a bunch of different partners, but he is also captain. It is his responsibility to kind of step up when you need him to, and he did that against Inter last game, but he did not step up today. He has to step up against Inter next game. We need him there in those big games. If he can do that, then I think his critics should really kind of back off for a little bit, but he needs to prove himself next game. Tomori looks solid again. I've been kind of in the middle on him. I see his awesome potential, but I'm also not one of the ones who's just going to say that he's awesome because he's fast. I would like to see the positioning come into play, the aerial marking come into play, and if he can get that, I really think he's going to be top notch. So today was a really good sign for me, as his positional play was some of the best that I've seen from him so far. Yes, he lost his man here and there, but for the most part, it was better, and that's a really good sign. If he keeps working in this way, by the end of the season, this guy could be pretty dynamite, so keep an eye out for Tomori. Colulu looks to be a future gem, in my opinion. I just like how confident he already seems at such a young age. And I mean, it's not cocky confident, it's just calm and confident. He seems much more mature than the young age that he is. So he played very, very well overall. He left his man a couple of times. He would get up a little bit too far into the play and then forget to track back, or not track back, maybe due to lack of energy at the time. So that was a couple of things that you got to work on there. Needs a little bit more balance between defense and attack, but his marking when he was back was solid, so I liked that a lot. He was always marking the guy in the box. He never let somebody just randomly slip behind him, something that Dalot can be guilty of, that Colulu was not today, which is great. Mate, which I've already kind of mentioned, I won't beat that one up, but played his first really solid match, but then his poor marking led to the second goal. Tonali answered the call today in a very big way, which is awesome, as this is great prep for Inter because we are going to be without Benacer, so we're going to need Tonali playing at a top level. And if he plays like he did today, that'll be great. That would be a very, very, very big boon in our side. Ante Rebic, in my opinion, looks more ready to go than Rafael Leao, so he should get the nod versus Inter. He overall is a better player, in my opinion, more consistent than Leao. He also makes the left flank work with Theo Hernandez. Leao has more spark. He has more flair. He's that type of guy who, if he plays for 60 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes of it is going to be dynamite, and the other, you're not even going to notice him. So I think that he's better to come off the bench and give you that speed later in the game. Samo Castillejo, this may shock some people, but I think he's in better form than Salamakers. Salamakers has been pretty junk since he came back the past few games. Prior to that, he was very, very solid. He's a good cog in the wheel, and sometimes he comes with flashes of brilliance, but since he's come back from the injury, he hasn't really had those flashes, so Castillejo may get the nod over Salamakers. We'll see. I don't think so, but Samu seemed to be in better form, at least today. And lastly, Mandzukic just doesn't have the 90 in his legs yet. Good player, solid player. I think it's a solid signing, but he needs some more time to adapt. His positioning needs to be a little bit more central. He shouldn't be drifting as much, and he needs some more time to get that fitness back. But not bad fitness overall. Overall, disappointing game. We should have taken this 2-1. There's no excuse for getting scored on in the past few minutes, and I'm just hoping that Milan can turn it around, keep their heads up, and go strong into the Inter match. Thanks for watching, and Forza Milan.